SIG-23, this should be the last one of my catch-up, hopefully. It is 26 January 2021. This is from yesterday. 25 January 2001, political warning. Texas first to sue Biden administration. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed 2 lawsuits against the Biden administration. The first over the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, and the second over plans to halt or overturn existing deportation orders. Paxton's federal lawsuit alleges the Biden administration is overturning federal immigration laws, quote unquote, by memorandum. Observers note. Some Democrats have questioned whether the Biden administration will be harangued by lawsuits as the Trump administration was. I don't see why not. For four full years, lawsuits against the administration gave federal judges the opportunity to order injunctions against Trump's domestic policies. Some Republicans had supported a process by which a federal judge's injunction would only apply to the state where the lawsuit was filed, forcing lawsuits in all 50 states in order to achieve the same nationwide injunction. That rule change, however, was not successful. Expect Republicans to shop their lawsuits to courts that will file injunctions filed against the Biden administration. Trump appointed 174 district court judges and 62 federal appeals court judges, giving Republicans plenty of opportunity to challenge Biden's policies, including the Pathway to Citizenship plan, through the courts. Biden-Schumer plan to bail out New York. In a letter to FEMA, Senator Rick Scott is asking for clarification on an alleged agreement between Biden and Schumer to transfer $2 billion in FEMA disaster relief funds to bail out the state of New York's budget shortfall and state pension plan. Scott, a former governor of Florida, blames New York's fiscal problems on decades of mismanagement, citing Schumer's own public comments on the money being used to bail out state and local budget shortfalls. Observers note. One reason why Republicans opposed COVID relief proposals from Democrats is because they authorized bailouts for primarily Democratic states and cities, many of which remain in dire fiscal straits because they're fucking their own people over. New York was home to some of the most restrictive COVID orders, which crippled New York City and devastated the state's already weak fiscal shape. This agreement looks like a classic drug deal, in quotations, between the Senate Majority Leader and the President. Low-intensity conflict in some. Weekend leftist disruption summary. In Portland, Oregon, anti-fascists carried out disruptions at the ICE facility on the 3rd and 4th night in a row on Friday and Saturday. The activists vandalized the facility and clashed with federal agents and called for the abolishing of ICE. In Bellingham, Washington, Black Lives Matter activists and Black Bloc anti-fascists forcibly entered the locked City Hall building in an effort to thwart the city from clearing out a homeless encampment. Bellingham Mayor Seth Fleetwood was escorted out of the building while anti-fascists assaulted journalists and tore down the American flag flying in front of the building. Why would you assault your supporters? In Tacoma, Washington, leftists blocked traffic and clashed with police after responding to an alleged illegal street racing event on Saturday night. Leftists arrived to protest after an officer drove a police cruiser through a crowd after being surrounded by people, pounding on his windows, according to video of the incident. In response, a large group of Black Bloc anti-fascists vandalized buildings, smashed car windows, fought with locals, clashed with police, set up roadblocks, and started numerous fires on Sunday night. They also assembled outside the Pierce County Jail, attempting to pull down fencing, and called for the release of all prisoners. Failed city council candidate, Democrat Socialist of America organizer, why, you're just a Democrat, and Tacoma Disabilities Commissioner Rebecca Parsons amplified calls for protest, warning attendees that there will almost certainly be armed white supremacists there, in quotations, and that Tacoma Police Department would inject spying software onto their phones. Observers note, Portland remains the epicenter of far-left disruptions against the government and law enforcement. Anti-fascists continue to exploit any event they can to spark uprisings in smaller cities such as Bellingham. This is a trend we're continuing to monitor as far-left groups are working to avoid isolation in larger cities. Leftists call for offensive hacking campaign against the government and the right. You notice this is all coming from the left, from liberals. In response to the crackdown on anti-state groups from the government and big tech, far-left activists called for an offensive hacking campaign referred to as hacktivism. Pardon me. I don't know how many of these videos I did in a row just now. Referred to as hacktivism against the government and those on the political right. Activists shared various manuals that detailed the specifics of hacking, stealing data, intentionally spamming users, and disabling communications network functions. They claimed that hacking will hamper their oppressors and enable leftists to steal the funding necessary for new experiments in autonomy. Ooh, new experiments in autonomy. Observers note, many on the far left are concerned that expanded federal law enforcement action against anti-state groups pose a threat to their plans for ongoing disruptions against the Democrat-controlled government. Fearing mass arrests at public events, remote activities ranging from hacking to bombings could be utilized more frequently to preserve manpower and resources. Specifically, an offensive hacking campaign is aimed at tying up government resources and disrupting their organizations. These efforts, however, are likely to attract increased attention from federal law enforcement. Far-left intelligence support group provides police identification guides in New Jersey. Members of a leftist intelligence support group created and distributed a quick recognition guide of police officers in Hudson County, New Jersey. The reference poster identifies the uniforms, insignia, vehicles, and locations within the county. Observers note. Identification guides, mapping of law enforcement positions, and identification of optimal areas or routes for disruptions allows far-left groups to better evade law enforcement and exploit gaps in security. While some of these intelligence products are fairly rudimentary, leftist intelligence support teams are laying the groundwork for ongoing and potentially escalating disruptions in the near future. Far right expresses optimism for prolonged insurgency. Chat room participants claim that once they are able to establish an insurgency, the federal government will not have the power or capability to effectively stop it. Agencies such as the FBI and CIA, they claimed, are more apt at preventing insurgencies but lack the ability to effectively counter them once established. They also pointed out that the number of people on the far right with military experience, combat skills, and survival skills spread out across the expansive terrain of the country will sustain an insurgency long enough to cost the government trillions of dollars. They stated that the military is tactically unprepared and untrained to fight a protracted domestic conflict and has failed multiple times to control smaller countries. They concluded that special operations units could be effective but are undermanned to have a deep, lasting effect in such a large country. Observers note, white identitarian groups don't have the capability to mount a nationwide insurgency, but they could carry out an unorganized campaign of disruptive attacks. Accelerationist influencers have previously complained about a lack of accelerationist attacks, but even a single high-profile attack would make domestic terrorism legislation more likely, which some accelerationists see as beneficial. As they've seen with white identitarian mass shootings in previous years, I would actually have to see all these white identitarian mass shootings. Terrorism is often the only outlet, and of course you can't rely on the SPLC. You can't rely on the ADL. You can't rely on anything the liberals churn out. So I don't know where we go because they seem to dominate everything now from the White House all the way down to the local level. So I don't know where we go for truth in reporting. Terrorism is the only, as we've seen from the, I'm going to put it in quotes, white identitarian mass shootings in previous years, terrorism is often the only outlet for small and relatively weak groups to target the state, almost always by attacking soft targets. These groups are very unlikely to be able to fight a prolonged insurgency, so terrorism and/or accelerationist attacks will likely remain their only recourse. Finally, an upcoming event calendar for 31 July, Black Lives, in parentheses, Still Matter, disruptions, Seattle, Washington. Holy crap, that was a lot. But it is the 26th. That was from the 25th. I am officially caught up. So we'll see if YouTube boots me off. I already got a strike. I'll probably get another strike. I've already got warnings from Facebook. So yeah, we'll see. I don't really care. So and I'm putting this out for whoever wants to watch it. Yeah, it's really good information. Americans need to take note. Americans need to see what these liberals are doing. Americans need to copy what these liberals are doing. Because they are actually formulating something effective. Just saying. With that, know who your people are. Really know who your people are. Rely less on social media. You may have to go back to, I don't know, a lot of texting is not secured, but just know who your people are and watch your six. Maybe go back to traditional ways of communicating, non-electronically. So, with that, 623 out.